and then the the scenes story today. And they got to watch the show when they weren't on in Lorne Michaels' station, which is this hut where they're actually like serving drinks, but it's where he produces the show, makes key decisions. And he invited, Steve Mayer in there, the Devils owners in there, Pat Brisson, the super agent in there, Quinn's parents, and obviously Hillary, Megan Keller, and the Hughes brothers, and they got to watch the show there. But then they went to an after party at the Mermaid Oyster Bar, which I don't know if you've ever been to, Anthony, but they went to an after party, 400 people, models, celebrities, people like that. And Lorne Michaels hung out with them pretty much the entire time. And Lorne is from Toronto. He's a big Rangers fan. His kids are Devils fans, so we're huge Jack Hughes fans. And, what the one thing Jack said over and over to me yesterday when I was talking to him is how much he just absolutely loved meeting such a legend like Lorne Michaels, who created this, heavyweight show 50 years ago and is still running it to this day. Welcome back to Worst Seats in the House. Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta. Our next live show is March 9th. March 9th, 7 p.m. at Elsie's. Anthony, put that on your calendar. How you doing, man? You got the night off tonight. Another day off for Anthony.
Yeah, it's, as I've said before, it's not my preference to have nights off during the season. I'd prefer to call every game. But yes, have the night off tonight. So I'm going to come to the game, so I think I'll probably maybe I'll look over your shoulder and watch and see just how much of the game you watch and how much of the game you watch staring at your computer.
Yeah, getting all upset. Just as long as you don't take any pictures over my shoulder, that's great. Anthony, and by the way, if you are listening to this podcast and you're a Wild fan that's going to be exhausted tonight, just blame Anthony. He's the reason why this game is on national TV.
Right, so and why we've got another 850 puck drop. It really is. I understand the fact that they want to have doubleheader games on TV, but it's crazy to me how the East Coast never gets inconvenienced. Like if you want to have a doubleheader, have them start at 6:00, and they say, well, we can't start before 7. Well, how about if you said you can't start after 9 on a weeknight in Minnesota? It seems like there'd be some kind of happy medium in there, so you didn't have to have these late puck drops, which we should specify have never happened when the game is on FanDuel Sports Network.
No doubt about it. And I will say the fans in Tampa, though, will be inconvenienced tonight because their game obviously is starting an hour later from their
right.
Time
No. I'm talking about the normal 7 o'clock Eastern early half of the doubleheader. And I'm saying it seems like you could have some kind of a happy medium and say, even if it's on doubleheader nights, we're going to ask the East Coast teams to play at 6:30 so that the Central Time Zone guys at least drop the puck at 8:15.
Yep. I guarantee every Wild fan listening tonight agrees with you. So Wild play the Tampa Bay Lightning tonight. I just, before we get into the Wild, I just got off a plane. I was in New York City, got to take in the Tonight Show and witness Jack and Quinn on there with Hillary Knight. They were all three outstanding, really entertaining show. I actually thought, and Nicole Kidman was obviously the headliner. And what was really neat is seeing the reaction of Quinn and Hillary Knight and Jack meeting her before the show. But I actually thought that Quinn, Jack, and Hillary stole the show. They were hilarious. There were touching moments. The interview, I believe, online was about 7 minutes. The interview on TV was 7 minutes. The interview in total, the original interview was about 12 minutes. So if you go online on their socials, the extended version of the interview will be on there, and a lot of good stuff was cut out, but they have to obviously trim it for television. But Anthony, it was really funny. And just, again, you and I have talked about this. Obviously, we discussed that from a Quinn standpoint, which is what Wild fans care about. You really want him to now start concentrating on hockey. But this stuff is so much bigger than just a couple regular season games. Just to get NHL players and a very very important fixture in USA women's hockey on late night television for the second time in 3 nights, being on Saturday Night Live, then obviously being on the Tonight Show. It's huge. It's great exposure for this league. It's getting people that aren't necessarily hockey fans to say, "Oh, what are these athletes about? What's this sport about?" And I actually think it's for the good. And if it means that Quinn's tired for one more game, so be it. He's got 20 games till the playoffs to get his sleep in.
Yeah, I agree, and it's exposure for the Minnesota Wild on a national stage that just hasn't happened very often throughout the history of the franchise. And it is good for the league, and the league needs to broaden its fan base. All the leagues are trying. That's their challenge, and this is a great way to do it. I mean, I don't think it's not like you're going to watch Quinn Hughes tonight and say, "Oh, I could tell by that play that he was flying back and forth across the country yesterday." I don't think it'll be a noticeable difference, and they do have a couple days off after this. And let's to really pare it all down to the simplest form. I mean, this is Billy Guerin's call, and with I'm sure John Hines having some opportunity to weigh in. But if they say it's okay, then who am I or you or anybody else to say that we don't think it's right for them to do this in the middle of a season? Those guys said it was fine. I think it's great for the organization. I think it's good for the league. And, it's not something that they're going to do every week. I don't think you'd be saying, hey, each week we're going to have you fly to New York on Monday to do a TV show. I mean, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about something rare. And that actually just kind of reminded me. Sure, remember Lou Danny was doing that when he was playing. I think he was flying to go do, I don't know if it was Hockey Night in Canada or if it was Monday. I think it was Monday Night Hockey on ABC or something like that, where he was flying to go do color for games when he was still playing.
Yeah. And I don't think he was taking a private jet that Quinn Hughes and Jack Hughes have been taking in. So
no, although maybe his game was so slow you wouldn't have noticed when he was tired.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe Lou was going on horseback.
Could be.
What's funny? I was in the airport yesterday, flying to New York, and all of a sudden I'm sitting there, and Tyler Nanny walked right by me, and he was on his way down to Texas for a conference. But it was just so funny. I was literally texting with Lou Nanny as Tyler walked right up to me. So that was kind of funny. But yeah, so let's talk a little bit about Saturday Night Live if you're cool with it. I don't know if you got to watch the show, but they were on the monologue at the end of it, and some funny lines. And it's not meant to be, they're not thespians. They're not it's not meant to be great acting. But what was really neat is I got to do a behind the scenes story, and that ran in today's Athletic. So I wrote a story that night. I wrote a Tonight Show story last night, and then the behind the scenes story today. And they got to watch the show when they weren't on in Lorne Michaels' station, which is this hut where they're actually serving drinks, but it's where he produces the show, makes key decisions, and he invited Steve Mayer in there, the Devils owners in there, Pat Brisson, the super agent in there, Quinn's parents, and obviously Hillary, Megan Keller, and the Hughes brothers, and they got to watch the show there. But then they went to an after party at the Mermaid Oyster Bar, which I don't know if you've ever been to, Anthony, but they went to an after party, 400 people, models, celebrities, people like that. And Lorne Michaels hung out with them pretty much the entire time. And Lorne is from Toronto. He's a big Rangers fan. His kids are Devils fans, so we're huge Jack Hughes fans. And, what the one thing Jack said over and over to me yesterday when I was talking to him is how much he just absolutely loved meeting such a legend like Lorne Michaels, who created this, heavyweight show 50 years ago and is still running it to this day.
No, well, a couple questions there. One, no, I've never been to the, what was it called? The Mercury?
Mermaid Oyster Bar.
Oyster Bar. No, I have not been there, which I know comes as a shock to you because I usually do hobnob with the actors and celebrities and everything. But I have not been there. And yeah, I mean, I thought I thought he was funny on the Tonight Show too. Just the little, the smiles and the self-deprecating humor, and I think the last couple of weeks have done a lot to rebuild his reputation, because he hadn't done himself favors with some of the things he had said just before the Olympics in New Jersey, when I think he was just kind of
Yep.
at his wits' end with the being questioned for his inability to get healthy and to get back in the lineup, and I'm sure Devils fans were frustrated with the way their season was going. But these last couple of weeks have really shown him in probably a more accurate light, rather than the one brief moment of frustration where he lashed back at the reporters and fans. And I think it really has come through. I think we talked on this show, the first time I really had a chance to visit one-on-one with Quinn Hughes was in a sauna when we were on that road trip during the World Juniors. And I had talked to him in the scrums and everything, but all of a sudden we just kind of landed in there at the same time, and we chatted for probably 15 minutes, and I'd say 13 and a half of it was about family. And it was so clear that it wasn't just for show. It wasn't said in front of a bunch of reporters. It was just talking about his family, and he was asking about mine as well. But that really came across with those guys together on some of these shows, that there really is a tremendous family bond
Yep.
between he and his brothers, and it's fun to watch.
Yeah, it really is. And you're exactly right. I mean, the three of them are like the three musketeers. Luke was in the crowd yesterday as well. Both Jim and Ellen, the parents, and I got to briefly say hello to them. And they got to meet Nicole Kidman, which was really, really neat. And she got to hold the medals, and it was really neat also being in the audience, and seeing the monologues, seeing the guests. I've been to the Tonight Show with Jay Leno a couple times. I've seen Fallon a couple times now. I saw Conan once back in the day. I've been to Saturday Night Live now twice. I was there in February 2001, believe it or not, after the Panthers played a day game at Nassau Coliseum, and I went to the show. I think it was February 2001. Dave Matthews Band was the musical guest, and Katie Holmes the host. So I got to see them now. And then after the show was over, they had to record like a game that they're going to play with some guests. I don't want to say who they are because I think it's probably a secret, that are going to be, it's going to be later in the week on there. So we got to actually see kind of a little overtime, and then finally got out and wrote a couple stories. So hopefully everybody reads that. To your point on fatigue, before, Anthony, I mean, the one thing that, and you're 100% right. Quinn Hughes has gotten Bill Guerin's not only permission, but encouragement to do this. But you could almost see that Quinn is uncomfortable with it. I don't think he loves the fact that he hasn't been on top of his game maybe the last couple, and the team has lost 2 out of 3. And he's talked the other day about how his secret sauce is rest, and it's to play 28 minutes the way that he wants to play 28 minutes. He needs to get his rest in. And I think we saw the other night, I mean, he plays 27 minutes after landing at 9 a.m. essentially on a game where the game puck drop was 7 hours later. It's pretty crazy. So I think he's looking forward now after getting back last night at a reasonable hour because they taped the show. So he got back around 10 p.m. He has a later game today. I think he's going to be really excited to just get his game back on track and hopefully right the ship on a Wild team that hasn't been at its best in the last couple.
Yeah, and you can see it. You can tell that he's a guy with high expectations for himself and for his own game. When he has a shift where he turns a puck over, you can tell, you can see it in his body language when he gets back on the bench. Like he has tremendously high standards for his own play, and wouldn't surprise me at all if he was really pressed on it and opened up, that he would say, "Yeah, I haven't been good enough," and he isn't the only one. The last couple games for the Wild have not been their sharpest. I thought the Utah game was different because that night, John Hines said it in the post game. He said there were stretches in this game where we got outworked, and there were also some stretches where their game was okay, but they just didn't score. St. Louis, I didn't necessarily think they got outworked, but they just weren't sharp offensively. And it was a game that was there for the taking, and they just, other than the Kaprizov, Hartman, Zuccarello line, nobody else could get anything going offensively. And now all of a sudden, we've talked about this stretch of the schedule, 6 out of 7 against playoff teams coming out of the break, with 2 trips to Denver, 1 to Vegas, the Lightning at home, the one, I want to say, break in that was the St. Louis game, and you let that one get away. So now all of a sudden you're staring at Lightning, Golden Knights, Avalanche next 3, and then a Utah team that's beaten them twice.
Yeah, and a Utah team that's actually beaten them in regulation in every game, or the Wild haven't beaten them in regulation yet. They had one shootout win that we saw come from behind game in Utah on their first ever trip. But remember, this Utah team is a former Phoenix Coyotes team that the Wild used to absolutely dominate for fun, and that's changed here not only last year, but twice this year, and toward the end of that Arizona run where the Coyotes started to play better against the Wild. So the Wild are starting to have a little bit of a, as Matt Zuccarello said after that game, a kryptonite feeling against the Utah Mammoth. So we'll see. Well, have to get their game back on track.
And we're talking 4 games away, but when John Hines left his post-game presser, I can't remember, you weren't in Salt Lake, were you, for that game?
No.
And after the post-game, he just kind of turned and he said, I can't wait to play those guys again in a week and a half or 2 weeks or whatever it was. So the Wild are well aware that they've been handled twice by that Utah club.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been close in either game. And I think they're anxious to get back on the ice against them. But there's a lot of work to be done before that game.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. Starting tonight with a Tampa Bay Lightning team that, as we know, is a formidable opponent. Yesterday, the Wild grabbed Robbie Fabry off waivers. Has not played a lot for the Blues this season. Has had injuries in his career. His game has seemed to have taken a turn from the worse in his career here the last couple. He is somebody that's scored 15 or more goals 4 times in his career with the Red Wings, was part of a cup-winning Blues team where he played at least 10 of those playoff games when they won the cup in 2019, Anthony. But, I think it was they just saw a free player on waivers, and they just felt like, to be blunt, I hate saying it like this, but, get an NHL player that means that they don't have to have Ben Jones and Tyler Pitlick and maybe eventually Vinny Hinostroza in the lineup. I mean, I think this was just their way of trying to repair a fourth line that hasn't been very good lately. Nico Sturm has not been very good lately. And I think this is sort of the beginning of them trying to figure out a way to get some depth scoring, because since at least the Olympic break in a small sample size, to your point, other than Zuccarello, Kaprizov, Boldy, and Eriksson Ek, nobody else on the team has scored.
Yeah, and it costs nothing, or essentially nothing,
Yep.
to make it costs you nothing in terms of assets on your team. So this is not the move Bill Guerin's plotting to make. I mean, this is just a guy out there that, I remember a few times over the years where players have said, hey, would this guy make us better? And they'll ask a player who played with him somewhere or something, and yeah, he'd help make us better. And then they grab him. And it's a absolutely zero risk. Grab a guy who's proven he can play in the NHL, and I think you're right. I mean, he makes a fourth line better than Tyler Pitlick or Ben Jones will. Those guys have had their moments when they've been just fine, but bottom line is that line hasn't produced. The Russian line briefly did, but they've dried up a little bit now. And I mean, when another move is made, the trickle down effect is going to kick somebody that's in the top 6 right now into the bottom 6. Yeah. And then you combine that with, hopefully the return of Marcus Foligno, and all of a sudden then your bottom 6 looks more like what you'd expect it to look like when you laid out how will this team look in the playoffs.
Yeah, it will be interesting, because you're right. I mean, if they add, say, a Trocheck or somebody like that ilk, they're obviously going to be in the top 6. And then the question is, where does Ryan Hartman land? Does he go back to wing? Does that just move Danila Yurov to wing? Where does Marcus Johansson land? And where does Vladimir Tarasenko land? So, adding a Fabry at a minimum, it probably knocks Hinostroza out of the lineup, and maybe even eventually Fabry. I mean, I think this was just a way to try to get, see if they can take a flyer on a guy that, at one point was a really good player. Why do you think that that Russian line is sort of dried up? I mean, do you think they just, got out of practice by being off for 3 weeks? I mean, the one thing that Kirill Kaprizov made the point of the other day, and, he was one of those players that was off for 3 weeks, is that for him, especially, it is not good to just suddenly just stop playing for 3 weeks, that he'd rather be on the ice playing, practicing, things like that.
Well, it's disruptive for the whole league, and that's that's a longer topic for another time. But that's why when people will talk about the fact that well, why wouldn't the league have let these guys play in the Olympics all these years till now? What when the league watches this, they have to be kicking themselves for why they didn't allow this in the past. And I was like, look, this isn't great for the league. It just isn't. It shuts down the league and disrupts the momentum of a season for 3 weeks at a time where there's nothing else on television. Football's over. Baseball hasn't started yet. It's the prime time to be watching hockey games, whether in person or on TV. You've got a season that all of a sudden it's the playoff races are just starting to heat up, and 90% of your league is just going to shut it down for 3 weeks and go on vacation for two and then come back and practice for one. I mean, it's an incredibly disruptive time. So, I mean, I think the Olympic tournament was great, but it isn't good for the league. And this is part of the reason why is you can't expect these guys to all of a sudden jump back in. I mean, look at the times we've talked about it and said, well, how's a team going to tweak things when they can't practice because the schedule's so tight? Well, how about if you just tell guys to go shut down for 3 weeks in the middle of the season, and then you expect them to be sharp when they come back? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So I think that's part of it. But I also think to the original question about the Russian line, they weren't super productive right before the Olympic break either. They had a good night in Nashville, but the couple games before that they hadn't been great. And I mean, it probably is more what that line really is. I mean, Jakub
Yeah.
Trenyan he's been a great physical presence for the Wild, leading the league in hits by a wide margin. When that's all he's asked to do, he's been a good player, but he isn't gonna be a game changing scorer. Vladimir Tarasenko, we've talked about all year, thought he had a chance to be like a 20 goal scorer type guy. He's still pretty close to that pace, but 20 goals means you score once every 4 games. And Danila Yurov he's not yet a productive offensive player in the NHL. I think he's got a chance to be more than what he's been so far, but he's still like in the top 15 among rookie scorers. I mean, it's a hard league for rookies to score.
Yep. And to your point on just stopping, check out the Lightning. So they win 11 in a row, and then they go 9-1-1. Okay. And the last 2 games, they've given up 11 goals and 2 back-to-back losses at Carolina and home against Buffalo. So we'll see if that continues tonight.
Yeah, and Tampa's in a spot kind of like Minnesota, where about half their roster was playing in the Olympics. So
Yep.
imagine the teams that only had 1 or 2 guys over there, and had 18 guys sitting at home on the shelf.
Yeah.
And yeah, there are occasions where it was good for guys to rest and get healthy, and guys like Jonas Brodin, for example, where you're going to miss 6 to 8 weeks. Well, to have 3 of them be when the league is shut down, that's a great thing. But for most of the guys like Kaprizov, like Zuccarello, like Ryan Hartman, like these guys that are in the kind of the routine, and they're on a roll in the season, and now all of a sudden you say, hey, we're going to have you go hang out on a beach for a week and relax with family for a week, and then come back and go through some skating drills for a week, and then hit the ice at full speed for back-to-back games in Denver and Salt Lake City. That's not
Yeah.
easy.
No, you're right, 100%. And to your point, also on Tampa, Minnesota, it's like the perfect storm. You got half the team tired and half the team completely, just rusty, and so we'll see where that goes. Marcus Foligno, that is, that's a loss. I mean, there's no doubt about that, and clearly, I don't know if Fabry is sort of the replacement until they get him back, but I mean, Bill Guerin sort of opened the door when I asked him the question the other day, if it's something, if they feel like he's, long term, if he has to address that. At least the injury happens now, where if something comes up here in the next week, before Friday's 2 p.m. deadline, he could address that. You can't just replace that type of physical presence, but maybe you can go out and actually get an NHL player here. They're saying week to week, not season ending, but clearly this is something that's popped up that's not good.
Yeah, and he was pretty quick to just say, look, you can't find players like him just laying around out there. He's a different, even though he hasn't had the offensive production that he'd like to have this season or that he's had the last few, he's still a player that's hard to replace. But I thought one of the most interesting points that Billy made during that press conference, as long as we're kind of on that topic now, I thought his last answer might have been the most interesting one of the whole press conference when he was asked about the teams being so clumped together in the playoff race that it can change what teams are looking for, who's looking to trade. And he was asked, like, has this happened where you've had a player pegged, maybe even the framework of a deal in place, and then all of a sudden their standing has changed and the deal's had to be reworked? And he just looked at it and said, yes, it has happened, leading you to believe that there have probably been, and you can figure it out as you look around the league and say, okay, here everybody was talking about Nashville being ready to move Ryan O'Reilly or Steven Stamkos, and all of a sudden they won a few games, they're within 2 of a playoff spot. And that, I'm not saying that is the one, but that could well be one of the teams where they've at least pegged a player, said, hey, this might be a fit, maybe had the first framework of a deal, and all of a sudden, because the race is so tight, now a team's in it and they can't make the deal that they were originally planning to make.
Yeah, I mean, the Columbus Blue Jackets is another one. I mean, they just lost a game the other night. They did win one since, but they were on fire. And I'm telling you, I think Charlie Coyle was sort of a backup plan for the Wild if they can't get a Trocheck and O'Reilly, things like that. And right now, I mean, Columbus has put themselves in a position where they're 3 points back of Boston for a playoff spot. Even in games too, but really feeling confident about itself under Rick Bowness. So without a doubt, that was an interesting point that he made, and one that I think is really the issue here. Is there's not a lot of. I mean, this is I think Friday is going to be a very crazy day in the league with a lot of moves, but there's really not a lot of game changing names out there. So unless something just completely comes off the beaten path that we didn't even consider, I mean, there's Robert Thomas, but I don't think right now guys like Brady Tkachuk or Austin Matthews, these guys are getting dealt. I really don't. But I mean, so if you're looking and you're like, Trocheck is going to be super expensive and Kadri's got way too much term and age, and and O'Reilly and Stamkos are going nowhere, and now Charlie, there's just not a lot there that really I think are game changing moves that the Wild can make.
Well, I think that's potentially true, but there are a lot of guys who could make teams better. And, Charlie Coyle is a name that you and I threw out a few weeks ago. Not, at least I threw it out without any inside knowledge that we were just kind of thinking off the top of our head, like what type of player out there might be a fit that would help the Wild. And I thought when Billy made the point the other day that we could it doesn't have to be a top 6 guy right now. It could be a bottom 6 guy. I think that's the kind of player that, and I'm not saying Charlie Coyle would land in the bottom 6. He might end up being the guy who plays in between Kaprizov and Zuccarello. Who knows if he's even on the Wild's radar, but he does seem like a logical fit for a team struggling in the faceoff circle, and he's a right-handed guy that could help them there. But I think what's interesting is with all these teams that are so close, it's amazing to think about the fact that buyers or sellers could be determined with a 2-game win or losing streak in the next 3 days. And on one hand, you might look at that and say, well, how short-sighted could your plans change just because, like, let's take Columbus, for example. The other night, they blew a 4-goal lead against the Rangers, wound up winning the game in overtime. Well, what if they had lost that game in overtime? Would that, and then, let's say they lose whatever game they have between now and the trade deadline. Would you say that, hey, because we lost that game in overtime and then lost on Wednesday night or whenever they play next, that means now we should sell? I mean, your roster hasn't changed. The rest of the league hasn't changed. But as simple, and I'm not saying they're wrong to do it, because they're all doing the math and saying, if we're 4 points out or if we're 6 points out, but it is unbelievable how narrow that margin is right now for so many teams that could make Friday very interesting, and it might end up being, well, okay, wait a minute. Now we're the next team on the bubble. We just saw them start to sell Well, that means we're not going to sell because now we're right there in it. And the team chasing us just decided to dump off a bunch of pieces. And maybe some teams are looking at it saying, well, even if we get in, what difference does it make? If you're the 8th seed in the West and you're going to face Colorado, what was the line a couple of years ago? A waste of 8 days or whatever, when
Yeah.
people were talking about if they make the playoffs and you face a team you can't beat. So I think it'll be really interesting because I think there's a lot of teams that might have several contingent deals in place, but teams might not be ready to pull the trigger on those trades until Thursday or even Friday, where like last year we saw a lot of the deals made a week and a half before the deadline because teams were more secure in where they were standing.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, we know that they need a center. I'm still really curious if they know that Foligno, even if he comes back, is not going to be 100%. If they go and try to make some move, like one name that is intriguing out there is Bobby McMahon, who's a free agent to be. Toronto Maple Leafs likely going to trade him. Big physical. Could chip in scoring, so that he's one guy that I'd be looking at. The one thing I want to point out, and I've gotten a lot of questions, like the Wild have 11 million in cap space, 12 million in cap space. That's no longer the case. Like, remember, it doesn't matter how much cap space they have at the deadline. There's a new playoff cap as well. So you can't just go out because they have 11 million. That was not including Brodin, by the way, and then go out and add that type of money, because then you're going to have to start scratching guys in the playoffs because you have to be cap compliant now in the playoffs. So that's the consequence of them repairing the LTI loophole that a lot of these teams were taking advantage of. So the Wild have, roughly 11 million in deadline cap space, but their actual projected playoff cap space is more like 7 million. So I think fans just need to almost look at that number more than the other number, because then all of a sudden you're going to be scratching guys in the playoffs because you have to become compliant. So, that's just one thing I just wanted to point out, because I don't think a lot of people are looking at it that way. They're just looking at what the deadline cap space is, and they're like, go get Kyrou, go get this guy, go that, and it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah, and there's a lot can change because you may end up with somebody else banged up, and you'd be in a different spot if you were desperate just to make the playoffs, where Minnesota, let's face it, I mean they're going to be in the playoffs, and so you're looking at it a little differently now, where let's say you were a team that was on the bubble, where you might say, hey, let's worry about who's going to be scratched when we get there and make the deal right now that at least gets us into the postseason party, and the Wild aren't in that spot.
Absolutely. Let's do this. Let's take a break, and then we'll come back and answer some Twitter questions.
Deer hunting season is here, and it's time to own your odds with OnX Hunt, the GPS hunting app trusted by millions of hunters. With the Hunt app, you'll have access to nationwide public and private land ownership information, waypoints, tracks, and much more, all at your fingertips. Go to onxmaps.com/hunt. That's onxmaps.com/hunt to sign up today.
At Royal Credit Union, we believe in banking with purpose. That's why we're here for you and your community with people-first service, local support, and all the accounts and loans you need to help reach your financial goals. As a not-for-profit cooperative, everything we do benefits the people and communities we serve, because Royal isn't just where you bank, it's where you belong. Experience the Royal Credit Union difference and learn more at rcu.org/royal support. Insured by NCUA. Loans subject to credit approval. Equal credit opportunity.
Every homeowner eventually deals with HVAC problems. Furnace stops working, your AC isn't keeping up, airflow drops, strange noises. Well, Aquarius Home Services handles both repairs and full system replacements. One call sends the right HVAC expert to your home. They'll offer a fast diagnosis, honest recommendations, and professional installation. Right now at Aquarius Home Services, $98 off any HVAC repair or new systems available as low as $86 per month. Again, $98 off any HVAC repair or new systems available as low as $86 per month. Aquarius Home Services is your one-stop shop for your HVAC problems. One call and your problem is solved by going to AquariusHomeservices.com. Aquarius Home Services, earning the right to be recommended. And don't forget to tell them that Russo sent you. Welcome back to Word Seats in the House. Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta, final segment of the show. Our next live show is March 9th. Is that Monday night, Anthony? March 9th is Monday night.
It's Monday night. It's right when we get back from the Vegas and Denver trip, which should be fun. excited about that trip, and we might have there's a chance we'll have a show at the trade deadline, unless the Wild do nothing, which maybe we'll have to do a show to explain why they did nothing. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's always a fun show, that first one after the deadline, where it's live, the first live show after the deadline, where you get a chance to hear from fans and you see what they think about what happened.
Remember the emergency little pod that we did in the Vancouver hotel last year for 10 minutes on my phone after Billy and I got into almost a brawl in the little presser about the Justin Brazeau trade. That was a fun one.
I was remembering the emergency pod that said it was time to panic when I wasn't invited in the summer.
I was right.
It wasn't. Why they signed him? It wasn't time to panic.
I know, they gave him more money.
Yeah.
And now he's the most overpaid player maybe ever. Guy, he makes $10 million more than Matt Boldy per year.
You're right. Well, but that's because Matt Boldy's on one of the best contracts in the NHL.
That's exactly right.
We were just talking about this with John Hines the other day, that, there's been so much about what Kirill is not doing, and what Kirill he's doesn't look the same. He's not. I hear it from fans a lot that he's not dominating games. And I said, okay, well, number one, they traded away his center in the deal to bring Quinn Hughes, and he hasn't been playing with it's either been Danila Yurov or Ryan Hartman with him on that top line since. And while both guys are good NHL players, neither one of them is producing offensively like what, you traded away a center who had 60 points last year with those guys. Then number two is that he's sixth in the league in points, and he's in the top 5 in goals. And yet we're talking about everything that he's not doing. And you just think, imagine, and now don't get me wrong, I think there's more there than what we've seen from him, but it is really interesting to think about the fact that we're talking about a Wild franchise that has so rarely had a guy that's been in the top 10 in the league in scoring. And here they've got a guy who's sitting 6th, and yet the feel throughout the entire fan base is that he's having an off year, that he hasn't been as dominant as he could be or should be. And maybe part of that's because the dollar numbers are attached to him now that didn't used to be, where, people sometimes think, well, once you pay a guy that kind of money, well, now he's got to score like Nathan McKinnon or else it's not worth it. And that's once you sign a contract, the player doesn't change. He's still the same guy. And, Kaprizov's on pace for 100 points, but I think a lot of people just assume he should have had 100 by this point in the season and be competing for a scoring title. And, maybe he could be, maybe he should be, but it's not a bad off year to be sitting 6th in the league in scoring.
Yeah, since they're both on pace for over 45 goals. And since the mid-90s, Anthony, that's only happened twice in the NHL where two teammates had 45 goals.
Well,
Yager and Lemieux, and McDavid and Draisaitl.
Yeah, and if you saw on our broadcast the other night, we went back further even, and we had, I believe there have been 4 in the last, I think we went back 20 seasons, because we included, there was a year that Vancouver had 2 in 2003. Naslund and Bertuzzi were both over 45, and then there was one other one, I can't remember. There were 4. I don't have the graphic in front of me, so I don't recall how far back we went. But yeah, it's crazy to think of what we're watching is something that's that rare.
Yeah, no, it's pretty impressive. You want to do some X questions, or does Vinny have thoughts?
Yeah, Vinny had a couple thoughts this week, actually, a couple that I think are interesting. And one is regarding the Wild and their penalty kill. And he threw out and he said, we had the coach who coached the penalty kill on Team USA and went perfect and was such a huge part of the gold medal win. It seems that we have the personnel here to have a top-notch penalty kill, and yet for some reason we're sitting in the mid-20s and have been there for the last 3 or 4 years. Do you have an explanation for that?
Well, Connor Hellebuck doesn't play for them. That's one. I mean, yep. And 2, JT Miller and Vincent Trocheck and Brock Millison don't play for him. I mean, look, these are elite penalty killers. This is why Bill Guerin and Chris Kelleher and the staff brought them to the Olympics over the Jason Robertsons and the Cole Caulfields of the world. And I do think that's why. I mean, these are the best of the best at their vocation. And I think that's part of it. It's not just system. I mean, look, you and I have talked about this all the time. John Hines and Pat Dwyer and Jack Capuano and Jason King, they can't go out there and kill penalties for the Wild. The puck needs to be stopped. The players need to do their jobs. And that would be my answer to that. Is it clearly what it's showing you is that it's not John Hines' system that's not getting it done.
Right.
It's the personnel.
Well, it is. Now, the only thing I would say is when you're talking about the personnel they had on that Olympic team, they were also going against all-star teams. So you have to compare on a level playing field because nobody is going to have Brock Nelson, Vincent Trocheck, JT Miller all on their team as penalty killers in that role. You know what I mean?
Right.
So in the NHL. So
and to your point, they're going up against the Connor McDavids and all that stuff. The other thing that USA had, if I could just butt in on one other point, with JT Miller, Brock Nelson, Vincent Trocheck, and Dylan Larkin, is those were your two sets right there. And they finished the tournament with a 70%, I believe, face-off percentage.
Right.
Close
so
to
that was exactly what I was just going to say, is that you can, because your personnel, if you compare it on an NHL level, I'm not certain that the Wild's personnel it's not as different as what you throw out when you just throw out the all-stars that are on there, because it would be the same to say, well, why isn't your power play good? Well, look at the power play had McDavid and McKinnon and Makar and Celebrini all the same power play. Well, you're not comparing apples to apples. But I think the 2 points that were most significant, at least in my opinion, one is the Wild have been terrible on faceoffs, and Team USA was terrific. They won the first draw of almost every penalty kill, even the 3-on-5 that we've talked about so much. It started with a faceoff win, and those are the kind of plays that can really help you. And then Hellebuck was just terrific throughout that gold medal game, but really on the penalty kill throughout the whole tournament. And the Wild goaltending has been good. It's like middle of the pack in terms of high danger save percentage when shorthanded over the course of the year, but Hellebuck was absolutely on top. So I think those two things to me are the two main reasons. But Minnesota's penalty kill, it just has to be better, because you might add a guy that's going to help your kill, but they're not going to go out and add 4 pieces at the deadline that are all penalty killers. I mean, there might be 1, maybe 2 that fill minor roles there. It just has to be better. And if it isn't, there isn't going to be a deep playoff run. We've experienced that. The other thing Vinny threw out was interesting.
Hey, can I just one thing that's shocking to me? So I'm on NHL.com, unless I'm reading this wrong. Do you know that the Wild have the 7th best shorthanded faceoff percentage in the league? Am I reading this wrong?
I haven't looked at it lately. They were right in the middle of the pack though earlier in the season, because they had a stretch. Remember that stretch where they killed like whatever it was, 22 out of 23 or something like that? During that stretch, they were like 60% on shorthanded draws. So it had them in the middle of the pack at that time. So it wouldn't surprise me if they were 7th would be. I mean,
it says they're 50.2%. Yeah, unless I'm reading it wrong. I mean, shorthanded faceoff percentage. Like, you know how sometimes it's really the power play shorthand, like the way they do it sometimes. But when it's shorthanded faceoff percentage, that's shorthanded. That's right. The PK. Yeah. So I mean,
right.
But sometimes they do it the opposite, and you got to figure it out. Like, all right, no, they were actually talking about the opposing power play. If that makes sense.
It wouldn't surprise me if they were. I mean, like I said, it would surprise me a little bit, but they were middle of the pack maybe a month or so ago. But it's also the points of those face-offs where we've seen so many goals 4 seconds after a face-off loss in your own zone and at key times in games, and it's a part of it. But then the point about Hellebuck was the big one. Some of the saves he made on the kill were terrific. But along the lines of goaltending, I'm not, and you know how much I hate talking about trade rumors and who the right guy and everything, because I just don't spend any time thinking about it or studying or researching it, but you do. So Vinny asked, with all the talk about having to add a center and whether it be a top 6 or bottom 6, have you heard any rumors about perhaps trying to make a deal that includes a goaltender going the other way for an upgrade in goal?
Well, I think that's I don't know about that, but I definitely think that if the Wild were going to trade Wallstedt, that they'd have to go get a goaltender. If that's, I don't know if it would be in the same type of trade or anything like that. So is that essentially the question?
No, the question was more because I think you and I agree on that if you trade Ballstead, there has to be either in that trade or a subsequent trade a veteran goalie coming to be the backup for Gustafsson. But I think Vinny's question was, have you heard any rumors about deals that would involve even Gus being traded, where it was for an
No,
upgrading goal?
no.
And yeah,
He's
and
got
I
a
haven't.
full no move clause. I mean, he's not getting moved. So I just can't see it. I mean, can you imagine what that would do to Gus's head if you go to him and say, "Will you move your no trade clause?" And he says
Right.
no, and now he's stuck here. Like it
Yeah.
just like there's a reason why he got a no move in the first couple of years of his next deal, and that was inherited in this deal. By the way, what I was talking about with the opposite is like that's usually with goaltenders. So like shorthanded save percentage is different than power play save percentage, and the one thing that's really interesting is the Wild's power play save percentage. So save percentage on the power play, not very good. So, so that there's sort of an answer right there.
Yeah, it's the goaltending they haven't gotten some saves when they've needed them, but I think by and large the penalty kill has been better this year, for sure better than it was last year, but they just statistically haven't overcome a slow start yet and still show up as in the middle of the pack. But what's been one of the interesting aberrations on that all year has been their ability to kill penalties on the road, where they've been in the top 5 most of the year. They were top 1 for a while on road penalty kill. They're still in the top 6 or 7, I think, over 80%. But for whatever reason at home, it's just been dismal.
It's the fans' fault. It's everybody listening to this podcast. You're scaring them at home. They can't kill a penalty.
Well, I would have said it's probably because when they're on the road, they have fans yelling at the opposing power play to shoot.
That's exactly right. And then they're shooting right into the legs and all that. It's a good point.
Yeah.
Great point. All right, Steven Glansberg asks, is it hard for a GM to receive Stramel in a deal knowing he could potentially not sign with anyone in the summer? I was just talking about that with somebody today, and it's because so many fans have asked this question. It's one thing that haven't occurred to me is like, I think that if you trading for Stramel's rights, he's going to know, well, heck, that team wants me. I'm going to sign there. But it is a point. Like, could you imagine you trade for the rights of Charlie Stramel? And then he's like, you know what? I think I'll just become a free agent August 15th. So it is there. Derek Boylan asks, how's Anthony's dog doing, Stanley? I was over at your house the other day, Anthony, and he was moving slowly.
Yeah, he's pretty much back to normal, though. He might have just been tired that day. He's for the most part back to his bouncy self. He doesn't like it when Marvin comes over, my daughter Gianni's dog. So that when Marvin comes over, he kind of hides under the table and doesn't want to be distracted. But he is becoming like a grumpy old man where I don't think he hears. I think this affected his hearing. So there are times where, like in the past, when the garage door would go up, he and Phil would both be at the door waiting. Now just Phil is, and I have to go upstairs and like have Stanley see me so that he knows I'm home. But you always get a kick out of watching them do their tricks after dinner when they get a little taste of whatever protein we had for dinner that night. And last night, Stanley, Phil, and Marvin were all at our house. And Stanley did his first couple tricks, and then he just got so tired of it, he didn't even want to bother and just walked over by the table and waited. And the third trick is we always make them pray. They lay down and put their chin on the floor, and then they stay there. And I go hide somewhere in the house, and then they come and find me. And Stanley was so disgusted, so bored with it, that he just wandered over by the table, just stared at me like, I'm done with this stupid praying game. I'm not doing it anymore. And I'll just wait because I know I'll just follow those two guys when they come to find you, and I'll get my treat anyway.
I was always got a kick out of that game because he would always go the wrong way.
Yeah.
And like it was just like you're always in the same place and he could never find you.
Well, I have a few different hiding spots, but it's I always start the same way just so they don't know where to look. But yeah, last night he was just, I'm done. I'm too old. I'm too mature for this game. You guys can play with Phil. And it was Phil's birthday party last night. Phil turned 9.
Oh, wow. 9.
Yep. So
that's
we had a
crazy.
Big
because
party.
I still remember warning Stanley the day before you got Phil that Stanley's life was going to change, but he didn't listen to me. just ignored me. I was like, do you understand what's about to happen to you? And he just acted all happy and all that stuff. Life changed the next day. Landon Thacker asks, how dumb do you think the trade Matt Boldy group from last year feels? Was that a thing last year, Anthony? I know you got the finger of pulse of social media.
I have no idea. I don't know who would have. I'm glad nobody asked us that question last year, because we probably would have laughed them off the show. I don't ever remember hearing rumors of trading Matt Boldy.
Well, I don't think rumors. I think he's saying that it was more like
like even I don't remember hearing like fans saying anything about it. I really don't. Maybe it's. I usually do have my finger on the pulse of what's happening on social media, but that one I must have missed.
Yeah. Walter Norris says, what happened to Opa? I mean, to be blunt, I don't think Kirill loved it. So I think they've retired that bit. Tyler asks, you have always talked about how the Wild treat their players so great. Can you give examples of amenities that the Wild have that other teams don't provide? Anthony, well, one is a state-of-the-art practice facility. It's amazing still. The number of teams like Colorado that's got these like pits that are like community rinks, Vancouver, like that's one of the things that's got to blow Quinn Hughes away. I mean, Vancouver has not invested into having a practice rink for that team. And then he comes over here to Tria, which is as good as it gets.
That's also the way. The other thing is that we travel better than anybody in the league. And I mean that sincerely. Like we've upgraded a few hotels this year from where we've stayed before. I think we've maybe changed, I'm going to say 6 hotels, and every one of them, well, with one exception, in Washington this year, we moved out to Pentagon City or whatever it's called. And I think that was out of need. It wasn't by choice. And it was still a Ritz-Carlton, but it was the only one of the 6 that I'd say was a step back. And it was because that like some kind of currency convention was in town or something, and we couldn't get into the Ritz where we normally stay. But we stay in the best hotel in every city. We travel with incredible meals on our plane, incredible wine on our plane. I might be biased there because I had a chance to weigh in on what the wine selection would be. So we've got some fine Italian reds in the back of the plane. But we truly do. We travel better than anybody in the league. And I know we've talked about this before, but Dominic Hennig takes a lot of pride in that and deserves some credit for it, because he did a lot of work on going and scouting other hotels in every city we visited. And we've changed in a few. And in fact, we just changed in Salt Lake City to the Asher Adams, which was nice. We switched to the Four Seasons in Denver. So on this last trip, we were in a couple new hotels, and they were both awesome hotels. We're spoiled. I mean, I'm spoiled because I would never stay in these places if it was on my own dime. So I just, I'm happy to be included in the travel party. But that is a big thing, and it is it's done to make sure that the players are comfortable, for sure. It's not done just because money's no object. It's done because they want these players to have every possible, I don't know if advantage is the right word, but every possible thing they can give them that makes them appreciate where they are.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I've been to that Four Seasons. Actually, I sat with Jeff Vinnick, the owner of the Tampa Bay Lightning during the 22 finals, did a big feature on him there at that hotel. The other thing, though, is just when they arrive, like the things that the team does and the money that they spend to put these guys in the best position. There's all these CBA rules. The Wild always go over and above, bringing entire families here. If you're called up, you're put in first class. That's not done anywhere else. All that type of stuff. They in the off season, they fly pets home. And when you're flying a pet to Europe, by the way, that's a pretty penny. That's not just, your $200 to fly to Atlanta with it. It's just, it's really interesting that just the way they do it. And it's why they have such a great reputation in the league. Let's go to a couple more, and then we'll wrap up the show, Anthony. Luke Sims asks, any possibility of Shane Wright? I think in a normal year, there obviously would be. Somebody asked me about Kent Johnson the other day, too. The only reason why I just think it right now in a win now mode, Anthony, going after a top young center actually doesn't make the sense, because the whole point is to get is to go and win and not have a project like a Shane Wright or Kent Johnson who scratched the other night, or I mean, I could be wrong, but it just it's hard to.
I think it depends on the player because for example, the guy that we've talked about a few times is Robert Thomas. I mean, he's still a young player, but he's not a project player.
Yes.
So if I'm going to give away one of the
Farm.
major assets that the Wild have right now, I want it to be for a young player because I want it to be for a guy who's going to help me for the next 3 or 4 years, not just this spring. And so it's got to be a younger player with some term where we're not talking about a year or two from being on the downside of the career, in my opinion. So young player's fine. Young player that's still trying to prove himself in the NHL. I agree with your assessment.
Yeah. Let's see. Thomas Hines asks who gets the 8 tonight with Moose out. Faber, Eck. He's asking. Usually it's Eck, right? Usually it's Eck or Zuccarello. I would assume Eck tonight.
Yeah, usually Eriksson Ek, but I don't know. I haven't asked.
Yeah. Mitch says, do the Wild plan to sign Rieger Lorenz after his season at University of Denver concludes? I believe that is the plan. Do you have any thoughts on the Minnesota boys high school tournament and the favorites in Class A and Class AA?
I don't know much about I don't know much about the Class A field. I know the AA field is incredibly balanced. There were some upsets in the sectionals, and I'm excited about it because it seems like the last few years there's been, maybe not the last 1 or 2, but for a 4 or 5 year stretch, it felt like there was a separation after like 1 and 2, and then there were some teams that they didn't really have much of a chance. This year, it kind of feels like it might be more wide open in the state tournament, but I think the top really 5 seeds, it wouldn't shock me if any one of those 5 emerged as the champion.
Yeah. Let's see. Stick on the Ice guy wants to know, can we hear Anthony LaPanta give a game call where in the middle of game action he yells "Great puke" by Gus? That would have been funny the other night in Denver.
Yeah, we did see it. We opted not to show it. We didn't put it on the broadcast, and then they showed it on the Jumbotron in Denver, which was I couldn't believe when they put it up there. And I haven't had to make one of those calls before, but he pukes. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's not like a blocker save Brzgalov, not like that. No. Somebody wants to know, do you anticipate that FanDuel will be back for the rest of the season? That's almost certain, right?
Yeah, that's the plan, is that FanDuel will finish out the season. I know the NHL is working with the teams that are in those situations. I think there were 7 of them. And the NHL, I know, will help to facilitate that and make sure that those teams and their games stay on the air. I mean, our plan is to stay on the air. And I feel badly for some good people that were still employed by FanDuel that are now, for the most part, it's a done deal that they're going to shutter everything once the hockey season's over. And I know some are still like holding out hope that they somehow find a way to stay in business, but I don't see it. It's too bad because there's some talented people. And then, the future of where the Wild go is, it's been we've been living in a state of limbo, really, in the TV, hockey on TV, and not just hockey, but all sports on TV business, going back to when Fox was originally sold to Disney. Then Disney couldn't buy them because of monopoly rules. They had to resell them, sold to Sinclair. Sinclair declares bankruptcy. You have a pandemic. It is now all of a sudden they come out of bankruptcy, they start over again. And then it's are they going to stay in business? Or are they not? I mean, it's been 10 years of really not knowing what's going to happen when this season ends. Where are the games going to be next year? Is the company still going to be in business? Are the rights going to be renewed? I can't wait for a time where there's some stability again in the TV business, where it felt like prior to that, for 15 years, you just knew the Wild were going to be on Fox Sports North. Everything was great. And now all of a sudden it's just again, more unknowns, and we'll have to see what happens. There's some good people that are having to make some difficult decisions right now to whether or not to wait around and see what happens, or if they need to jump and sign on in another capacity with another team or another sport. And that's too bad, because I hope the result isn't that we lose some of the talented people with whom we work on the Wild broadcasts.
Yep, well said. Minnesota Wild C4 asks C4T. I don't know what. Grand Casino renovations and improvements. What do we know? What could we expect? Do we anticipate the money being improved? I mean, essentially, the real difference here is that for the first time, they have a signed term sheet with the city of St. Paul. But as usual, I mean, Craig Leopold is willing to pitch in a ton of financial money. Same thing with the city of St. Paul. They're asking for the state for $200 million, and they don't want this big vital piece of St. Paul becoming a deteriorating building. And it has not been improved really in 25 years. So that continues to be where it is. But, look, obviously it's not a great time in Minnesota. I will say the new mayor in St. Paul has a lot of, because she was legislature, has a lot of contacts and good relationships in the Capitol. But who knows if that changes anything. Jade asks if Charlie Stramel is still an asset on the Wild on Friday. Would we see him in St. Paul after Michigan State season concludes? I mean, the big thing is that, Michigan State has a chance to go to a Frozen Four. So if he does, we're not going to see him for a long time. And that's the hope. Final question. Show C. Holson 0421 asks if the Wild trade for Trocheck, is Hines willing to take Eck off the power play 1 and PK 1? I would think PK 1, but power play 1, they're different roles. Like, Trocheck's more bumper. Eck is a net front guy. So I don't think that Eck would be taken off PP 1. I think it would be Zuccarello. Wouldn't you, Anthony?
Possibly. It may be none of the above, and Trocheck might be a part of the second power play unit. I mean, that's the top power play has been, they've scored in, is it 12 of 13 games, either 11 of 12 or 12 of 13, and are clicking at the highest rate in the NHL over that stretch, almost 40%. I'm not sure I'd be changing much of anything on that right now. Now, if something dries up between now and the end of the year and you tweak it, perhaps, but it's been pretty effective with the guys they have on it, and the running the crew of all lefties has been fine. So I don't think he'd take that penalty kill. I think you'd probably see some of X duties relieved for sure. He's still going to be a big part of the penalty kill. There's no doubt. And, maybe there'd be some times where you'd see those two on the ice together at if there's a key face off in your own zone or something, and now you got a righty and a lefty on the ice. So I think if he's the guy that the Wild end up acquiring, I think, I don't see him supplanting Eriksson Ek on the power play.
Yeah, I would say if anything, it would be Zuccarello, but to your point, it could be on the second unit as well. All right, that is the show. March 9th is our next live show. That's Monday night, 7 p.m. at Elsie's in Northeast Minneapolis. Come on down. We'd love to see you. And thanks to our incredible sponsors, Aquarius Home Services, your local authorized dealer for Connecticut water treatment systems, Onyx Maps, and Royal Credit Union. Thanks a lot, everybody. Talk to you next week.
So much coming out, there's nothing going in. I know that you feel like you're never gonna win. Oh, but the world